Welcome to the Access Extension Framework Tutorial 3, Installing the Standard Configuration. In this tutorial, we're going to import the extension framework into an existing front-end and back-end database. We'll assume for this tutorial that you're familiar with the Microsoft Access front-end back-end split database configuration recommended by Microsoft. If you're not, please watch tutorial 2 before proceeding. The extension framework offers full support for the split file configuration, with tools to maintain table links, automatically upgrade the front end, and automatically upgrade the back end data structure known as the schema. It supports multiple back ends in all these features. So, let's take the Northwind database as a sample. We've split it into front end and back end, and we've stored them on a shared drive F in the Northwind folder. Firstly, we load up the back end Northwind database. Then we can import the back-end setup form into it, as we did in tutorial 1. Notice that this time we import the form from the back-end template rather than the front-end template as we did in tutorial 1. This is the primary back-end, since it's the only back-end. So we import the back-end framework and then configure the identifying data. We can then delete the setup form. Let's have a quick look at the back-end tables that have been imported. To link tables between front ends and back ends and keep track of version numbers, it's necessary for the extension framework to be able to identify matching front end and back end databases. The framework uses a special ID table stored in each back end and front end database that identifies it as a valid extension framework database and gives it a unique fingerprint. Also recall that the framework needs to store its shared configuration information in one of the back end databases, which we call the primary back end. The first table listed here is the ID table, which stores the information we just entered. This is able to identify the backend uniquely, and there's also a version number, major and minor. This next table is the error log, which stores any errors which occur in the application. There are several more tables used by the framework. There's a shared search path used when linking databases. There's a couple of lookup tables used internally by the framework, and the framework shared configuration table. Now we can load up the Northwind front-end database and import the front-end setup form. This time we can import the standard configuration of the framework. That's the one that takes care of table linking and upgrades, as well as the basic stuff. The identifying data needs to be configured again. Once that's done, we can browse to the back end to link the framework tables needed to get things up and running in the Control Center form. There are still a couple of things left before the framework's fully configured. We need to add the back-end tables to the table linker. Now the easiest way to do this is to hit Ctrl-G to go to a code window and then type xf.cc. That opens up the Control Center form. It's also possible to open the form just by going to the XF Control Center form and opening it up directly. It'll give us a warning message, which is warning us that the backend tables aren't linked properly, and those include the configuration tables that the extension framework uses, which is why it can't give us the full control center at this point. When the control center opens, it requires a password, which by default is simply XF. But within the control center itself, you can change that password. Now, the password's not designed to be high security, and it can be circumvented fairly easily. But it's mainly just designed so that a curious user with a little bit of knowledge isn't able to get into the control center, because that's probably not a place where you want them to be. Now, once we're in the control center, the first thing we should do is go to the Linked Database tab. You can see if you drop down the list of linked databases that it's empty at the moment. That's because it's unconfigured. And there's a button there that offers to automatically configure the table linker based on the existing linked tables in the database. Once you click that, then you'll find that the drop-down has now got a database in it. If we drop that down and have a look at the information, you'll notice it's the back-end database that we just configured a minute ago, the Northwind back-end. And if we go to the Tables tab of the linker, then you'll notice all of the back-end tables from the Northwind backend are listed here. So every time we start up the database and call the framework startup routine, it will go through and make sure all those tables are linked correctly. Now that we've got the linked tables sorted, we can exit the control center screen and then go back into it again, and this time we'll get all of the tabs. Okay, now we've got the full complement of tabs in the control center screen. Please move on to the next tutorial, where we'll go through just a brief overview of what the control center does.